The Red Bull RB20 is speedy, but it also has many attitudes, or as Helmut Marko likes to call the car, a bitch. Even worse, none of the 4 big updates provided any improvement, and on top of that, the FIA has just officially banned one of their tricks to make the car easier to handle. Things are getting worse by the week, and to restore driver faith in the car, Red Bull is progressively pulling back development beginning with Monza. This is going to cost Red Bull a lot. So, now they're about to enter their desperate era, as Red Bull is feeling the pressure of the competition. McLaren is only 42 points behind Red Bull in the constructors' standings, and Max Verstappen has not won in 4 races. Sergio Perez has scored only 28 points in the past 8 Grand Prix. McLaren has had the superior all-rounder since the Miami Grand Prix, while Mercedes has had the fastest car since Montreal. Red Bull anticipates a reply from Ferrari after a little dry spell following the summer break. Because the competitors are more closely matched in terms of drivers than Red Bull, the fight for the coveted one-make trophy might still be close. Max Verstappen, on the other side, can be more confident with a 78-point advantage. He may count on his opponents to deduct points from each other. Head of Sport Helmut Marko puts things into perspective. We are better than our last results. Without the bad pit stop in Spielberg, the collision with Hamilton in Hungary, and the grid penalty in Spa, Max would be in a better position. Sergio Perez is Red Bull's problem child. The Mexican is more affected than Verstappen by the fact that the Red Bull RB20 has become a miracle car. Marko states, "At the start of the season, we had a car that was as balanced as the McLaren is now. It could do all tracks and all conditions. Then, we took a wrong turn somewhere. The car has become a bitch that only Max can tame. All of the development stages were ineffective. They made the car more and more unpredictable. It became increasingly difficult to tune and balance it." Marko looks back. Christian Horner, team principal, confirms, "The window in which our car works has become smaller. At the very least, it occasionally works." Max Verstappen put the Red Bull on pole in Spielberg with a 4/10 advantage and 6/10 in Spa. Marko advises against exaggerating the comeback to old grandeur. Those were special qualifying laps from Max. The superiority was gone in the race. Like Mercedes at the beginning of the year, we are sometimes fast and sometimes slow depending on the conditions, sometimes even in the same race as in Silverstone where it rained in between. The engineers have also discovered that their ambitious development agenda has occasionally gone too far. Others have experienced the same thing as they have. The improvement was at most a backward stride, not forward development. In the majority of situations, reality fell short of the wind tunnel's promise. The creation of these ground effect cars involves a delicate balance between good and evil. There is little room for improvement. Drivability in practice is much more essential than downforce records in theory. That was the situation with Mercedes and more recently Ferrari. Only McLaren is consistent, although it has also avoided substantial changes since the car's last major redesign. The Red Bull engineers will respond to the RB20's demands. Beginning with Monza, a development program will be implemented in which some of the previous standards will be used, or old pieces will be combined with new ones, especially in the region of the floor. If the reactions of the car are more predictable again, Perez will also regain his speed. This is why Red Bull did not replace the Mexican. They realized that their problem child would do better if he could trust his car. Perez finished on the podium 4 out of 5 races to begin the season. Furthermore, no Red Bull driver is now as fast as Verstappen in every racing car. If the car does not alter, everyone will face the Perez problem. They have set their sights on Perez and are investigating a variety of strategies to improve his form. The role of confidence is frequently discussed in Formula One. Overall, drivers perform best when their machinery gives them the confidence to push. Although some drivers can exploit cars that are more challenging to control, others suffer when a car's features do not match their driving style. Sergio Perez appears to be in this group, as the 34-year-old struggles to maximize the RB20. He constantly mentions feeling uncomfortable in his Red Bull, blaming a lack of grip. Regardless of whether this argument adequately explains his decline in performance, Red Bull is taking action. As Helmut Marko previously stated, older RB20 components will appear in forthcoming rounds. Perez, and maybe Verstappen, will employ parts from earlier this season. The expectation is that by providing Perez with a car that behaves similarly from the start of the season, outcomes would improve. Of course, there is no assurance that this approach will yield the desired results. After all, when Perez was achieving better results at the beginning of 2024, the competition was far less fierce. Even if Perez replicates his early season form, it may not be enough. McLaren and Mercedes continue to progress, but Ferrari might pose a significant danger if their Dutch GP modifications are successful. Furthermore, there is always the risk of making things too complicated. Changing and modifying Perez's RB20 might become a destabilizing influence over time. However, Red Bull has little choice but to explore and seek a solution. Given the decision not to promote Tsunoda or Ricciardo, Perez's performance must improve. But it will be a big bet, as reverting back to old parts won't directly equal better drivability or more speed. If neither is achieved, Red Bull will have spent more than the first half of the season and a big part of their budget on failed upgrades. And this could become costly at the end of the season, when the big points are earned. Next to this, Red Bull also has to remove their trick grey area brake balance, as the most recent FIA World Motorsport Council meeting approved a slew of amended and future rules, with a new paragraph involving brake systems reportedly being aimed directly at Red Bull. But according to the FIA, things are a bit more nuanced. The amended Article 11.1.2 of F1's technical regulations included some new material. The brake system must be designed so that within each circuit, the forces applied to the brake pads are the same magnitude and act as opposing pairs on a given brake disc. Any system or mechanism which can produce systematically or intentionally asymmetric braking torques for a given axle is forbidden. The unusual nature of the mid-season adjustment to technical regulations sparked conjecture that the FIA was responding to a device used by one or more teams this season. There were even outlandish claims levelled at Red Bull that its dip in form after the Miami Grand Prix was due to a potential ban on a method it may have been utilising, with some even claiming that Max Verstappen's retirement from the Australian Grand Prix was related to this. However, the truth is significantly different, since high-level FIA sources have stated that the modification was not triggered by anything teams were doing at the time, but rather by future-proofing regulations. A FIA representative stated, "There is no truth that any team was using such a system." So, what was happening? In the end, the adjustment has minimal effect on the legality of asymmetric braking systems. The FIA's amendments to 11.1.2 of the technical regulations enhance the original wording, which solely suggests that the forces delivered to the brake pads are identical on both sides of the caliper. The revised and added wording bans the brake circuit, whether front or rear, from producing asymmetric braking torque. It thus prevents what is more popularly known as a brake steer system, in which one wheel, usually the inner wheel, is braked with a greater bias than the outer wheel in order to aid balance and steer the car. However, FIA sources say that the original language was adequate to deem any asymmetric braking device unlawful. The true impetus for modifying the rules stemmed from efforts to clean up the laws for 2026 and make it clearer in the following rules era what was and was not permitted. As part of the ongoing negotiations to develop the standards for 2026, the same language prohibiting asymmetric braking systems was included, and after a request from teams to guarantee that no one sought to exploit even the smallest of grey areas before then, the additional language was introduced to both the 2024 and 2025 regulations. What's your take on it? Is FIA lying about teams using the trick? And an even better question, is Red Bull screwed for the remainder of the season? Will they even be able to defend one of the titles now the other teams are faster? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.